And so, the latest strikes to strangle backlog Britain is barristers in England and Wales who will walk out of courts indefinitely next month in a dispute over pay. Members of the Criminal Bar Association have been walking out in alternate weeks, but they've now voted in favour of an indefinite and uninterrupted strike from the 5th of September, unless they get a 25% pay rise. The Ministry of Justice says more than 6,000 court hearings have been disrupted so far as a result of the dispute over conditions when government sets fees for legal aid advocacy work. And that's at a time when there are already 66,000 cases waiting to be heard, with the waiting time for a day in court often reaching years. Well, joining me now is Grace Gwynne, one of the UK's youngest barristers. She's currently practicing family law but has worked in criminal law. Grace, I mean, most people have a tendency to think, oh, well, you know, people in the legal profession, they're paid loads. What do they want now with a pay rise of up to 25%? But actually, we're not talking about people earning big bucks, are we? We're talking about those who are still working on a taxpayer budget, basically, to try some of the most complex cases.
Absolutely. And I think that stigma and that stereotype is far from accurate. And actually, the members of the junior criminal bar are really struggling. And when you take into account the hours it takes to prepare a case, plus the travelling and the time spent in court, sometimes they're making less than minimum wage. And so these strikes are a desperate cry to the government to hear the desperation from the criminal bar to say, give us the fair pay for the fair work that we're doing and help us, because we love this job, but we cannot financially survive on the pennies that we're getting paid for it.
And there'll be people out there going, oh, well, you know, I wish I had the salary of a lawyer. So what is the salary of the average barrister in criminal law?
Well, it completely depends on their level of seniority and how long they've been doing the job. So the ones at the top of the game, yes, they are getting paid a pretty penny. But we're dealing with those at the junior end of the scale. And like I said, when you work out the hours that they have to put into this job, because ultimately they've got clients potentially facing custody, they want to do right by their client. So when you work out their hourly wage, it's less than minimum wage for some cases. And that's appalling when you look at the stresses that come with that job and the immense pressure that comes with it. And that's why these strikes are so important, because they need the government to stand up and listen to what they're saying. This isn't about greed. The criminal bar is crumbling.
I mean, we know that there is a huge backlog when it comes to cases being heard in court. You know, people who face rape trials, for instance, waiting years, at which time it's even more difficult to give evidence. We really are in a mess of backlogs in the criminal justice system. So why strike now? Everyone's facing the cost of living crisis.
But this story has been pre the cost of living crisis. This has been since the cuts to legal aid. And so the criminal bar has persevered and tried to work through those cuts. But it's got to the point where enough is enough. And whilst it is unfortunate for the delay for victims of crime, and it cannot be undeniable that that is the case, but ultimately we are losing good quality barristers because they are leaving the profession because they cannot financially survive. And so this isn't just about those that find themselves in a police station with a lengthy background of criminal activity. This is about also the innocent people that are accused of crime. You know, you want to have a competent barrister representing you throughout your trial, of which will be the most daunting period of your life. But at the moment, we are losing far too many criminal practitioners at the junior end because they cannot financially survive on the money that they're making. And that's the real crisis here.
You're saying we're losing them. Where are they going? Are they going into far better paid work in the private sector?
Exactly. And whilst they love this job, if they're not lucky enough to come from a wealthy background, they need to find other ways to supplement that income. And ultimately, when you join this profession, you come with a huge amount of debt in any event. And therefore, it's hard to then struggle to continue just to survive and pay your bills, rent, mortgage, whilst also doing this incredibly important, stressful job. And so it's about retaining the good quality barristers in this profession. And so for the future, we can provide in this country excellent level of representation for those accused of committing crime.
Grace, thank you so much for coming on and talking about this. Grace Gwynne there, who is herself a barrister. Do you know what, Chris? I actually find myself having more sympathy with them because they have definitely not had their wages put up for a long time. They'll have all had to pay a humongous amount of money on tuition fees to get to where they're going. They're starting off in their career and their salaries are far lower than the national average. And a lot of people don't realise that.
Lower than the hourly minimum wage, Grace was saying now. And I've known barristers and they say to me all the time, why is no one listening to us? 2,500 criminal barristers there voting to strike, but 9 out of 10 voting to strike. They want a 25% increase in legal fees. The government's offering 15%. 20% could be the place they end up landing on. But it does seem grossly unfair. And I think I was able to talk to a judge last week privately, not for any kind of court case, but just talking about this issue. And he was saying that what he's worried about is you will have fewer working class people coming in. Those with heavy student debt won't come in, and you'll make it less democratic in terms of who can be barristers. More richer people, richer families who are less in touch. I think there's a big issue here in how we deliver our justice. I wonder whether this is the end, maybe, of the criminal bar as we know it, and whether we go towards a national prosecuting service and it becomes taken all in-house and they're paid more like civil servants and away from this idea of putting bills in for legal aid. I wonder whether this could be the straw that breaks the camel's back.
Now, talking about civil servants, you sort of suggested to me when we weren't live on air that things when it comes to strike action could be getting a lot worse.
I think we are heading towards maybe a general strike this winter. I think there's talk of a mass civil service strike being announced on the first Monday of the Labour Party conference, and then there'll be a series of strikes and other unions might join in on different days. I think this could be a real winter of discontent Mark II going through autumn and into winter and early next year over pay. And I think this is the beginning, this is the harbinger of what's coming forward. This barrister strike starts on the first day of the new Prime Minister taking over, the new Tory leader, on the 5th of September. I think going forward it's going to be much, much worse. I think all the chat now that we have about these ideas, these Tory governments, Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss, I think that will be for the past, because I think events are going to take over very, very quickly, and it could be terminal for this current government.
Blimey, wow. Harbinger of doom indeed. Thank you, Chris.